The players have spoken, and boy, is it good to be a Minnesota Viking. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Today on the show, we got more combine updates for you. A lot of stuff comes out all week long. But one of the, traditions now of the combine for the last couple of years that's going to keep going is the NFLPA survey that is essentially a reflection of how happy players are to play for their teams, for a whole bunch of things that the Players Union has decided that like the collective of NFL players care a lot about. How's the weight room? How's the locker room? How's the nutrition plan? How do you feel about the staff? How do you feel about ownership? The Vikings have been one of the elites in these categories for every single year that they've done this. I think they've only done this the last 3 or 4 years, and the Vikings have been top of the tops in all of it. They've got state-of-the-art facilities. Players are very happy with all of the staff. They never have too crazy of complaints. They are very crucially, the big thing that they're really happy about is how the Vikings treat their families and the support resources that they have for their families, like daycare during games and family rooms, places for their family to go during games. So all in all is to say, the Minnesota Vikings players are very happy to be Minnesota Vikings. I want to sort of spin this into a conversation about the Wilfs. And in particular, being an owner, an NFL owner, isn't like a job that you get hired to and fired from, which is difficult to reconcile. I see a lot of, anytime you're unhappy with the owner, what do you hear, right? Well, sell the team, get rid of them, right? And it's the same logic as we don't like the coach, fire the coach. We don't like the GM, fire the GM. But it's sell the team. But they have to choose to sell the team. You have to bully them into quitting or just not wanting to be a part of this anymore. And ultimately, the NFL owner's goal, his obligation to his shareholders or whatever, isn't to win games. It's to make money. And if those things are ever at odds, you're going to get problems. For example, in this NFLPA survey, looking at the teams that are at the bottom, like the Bengals, a lot of, we just really want you to do stuff that's expensive that you're not willing to pay for, right? They want the nutritionist to be hired full-time. And that's the only team in the league that doesn't have that. They want upgrades to the facilities. They want a better, access to better tools. Same thing with the Cardinals, who've been near the bottom for a lot of this, and the Patriots, who are way near the bottom. Keep that in mind for later. So what this means is, I think, worth sort of hammering out. And then also, one of the things is the Vikings ranked second out of 32 in terms of high marks for how the players feel about ownership, how they like playing for the Wilfs. Only team that did better was Miami. And the criteria on which they judged that was, do you feel like this owner is committed to making a team, to staying competitive? And that's the thing that the players have decided that they care about, right? And what does that mean, right? What does that mean for our futures as Vikings fans? That the Wilfs are very, committed to staying competitive. And a lot of people really don't like that. In YouTube comments, I have gotten people saying the Wilfs, lack of willingness to take a year and do the tank and get a better draft pick is a problem. So I want to go through that idea as well. But first, what does it mean to have a team that your players like playing for, an organization that your players like playing for? What does it get you, right? Because it's all warm fuzzies, but it doesn't matter if what is the actual concrete impact? And we have seen a lot of examples over the years. The first one that comes to mind is Kirk Cousins, who joined the Vikings the year they built TCO Performance Center and had all these nice state-of-the-art facilities, and they were all brand spanking new. And he decided to go to the Vikings for less money than the Jets were offering him. And there have been other examples of that in the past as well, that For some reason, Kirk's the only one that's coming to mind. I want to say like Aaron Jones did something like that, but like you remember a few of them, I'm sure. So having, good marks here and a very publicly stated, everyone's writing the article, the local beats all over it, like having that very publicly stated, hey, it rocks to be a Minnesota Viking. Empirically and objectively, it's good to be a Minnesota Viking. Might just kind of skim the top off of some contracts and actually pay out salary cap wise. Probably not going to pay out the Wilfs investment, but again, that's why the players are happy, because the Wilfs are happy to invest their money at all, at basically all junctures. They've never said, but that's too expensive. And they've given, a lot of stuff that the players are really happy with. One response I remember from the last couple years that's like pretty common is the idea that, maybe the Vikings shouldn't be so happy to be Vikings. Maybe they're getting complacent because they're pampered. And for one, I think that's a little bit just kind of ridiculous, but to take it on its face, I would ask like what you think the problem is. Because if you look at like the actual points that these surveys make, what do you like? Well, that the training room is in good shape and that they have a lot of equipment that everybody can use and that we have enough space in our lockers. We're not crammed in the lockers. And that, we have a personalized nutrition plan. It's not one size fits all. And some teams have that and some teams don't. And the more players that feel that their nutrition plan was personalized to them, the better you score. And all the things that make you score highly on this are things that make players better. Because at the end of the day, players want to be better. And I would push back on this. It's this idea that when you don't see someone doing a job, you kind of assume someone just wants to try to get away with being as lazy as possible in it. And I think it's a little more common among older generations. It's like a way of thinking that's kind of, been like generationally like this aversion to being seen as lazy and working hard rather than smart being like better in this like elbow grease kind of thing, that you then kind of project onto other people and say, well, if they're not doing a good job, they must just need to work harder. It's like boxer in animal form. And I really want to push back on that. Players want to be better. Have you ever talked to an NFL player? I've talked to some NFL players like about this, like, the idea of like constantly looking towards self-improvement is a really fascinating topic to me of like how you approach that. And I love hearing how that like affects people's psyches, right? When you make a mistake, how do you approach it? And it's like, well, some people will stay up all night watching the clip over and over or trying to learn something new, or, they're going to do some stuff on their off time, or they're going to change something about their nutrition so that to see if they can like not get tired as fast and like all these other things. Everyone wants to be good. It's a fact you can freely take for granted. And how you approach doing that is, in my opinion, a matter of strategy, not work ethic. Necessarily. I think you can take a base level of work ethic for granted. Now, there are some guys that outwork others, right? It's a spectrum. Not everybody works exactly the same amount of hard, but there's a base level floor that you can take for granted. And that floor is above things like the coach is too nice to me and I'm not being pushed hard to work. That's not something that I don't think, like, I just don't think it's realistic. And in the same way that like when Zimmer was here and he was pushing people, like some players really respond to that, but it's not about, what makes people be less lazy. It's about, what style of coaching jives with you and what personalities jive with you. And that needs to be part of your like scouting process, both at pro and the college level. But I digress on all of this. The point is, if you are one of those people that thinks that, the Vikings should maybe not be so pampered, I would ask you to define what is pampering them. Because most of the answers you're going to get, at least out of this information, is tools that they need to become better football players that give the Vikings a genuine advantage. And that's really the takeaway here. It's not about the happy, warm, fuzzy feelings. It's that when you're on the Minnesota Vikings, you've got access to a better weight room, to better equipment, to better staff, to better nutrition, to better everything. That is an advantage. It's not going to be decisive. It's not going to be the only thing that you ever need. You still need talent. You still need good ideas. You still need coaching. You still need all good scheme and all that stuff. And the Vikings have had their failings and their successes elsewhere, but that is going to give them an advantage over their peers. It's a good thing, and you should be happy about it. But the big thing that, for me, the thing that stuck out the most to me was just how clearly defined the players drew the line between what makes a good owner and a bad owner. And honestly, looking at the comments and Twitter Tuesdays and all this stuff and questions that I've been getting for years, I think some of you are wrong about that. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I want to talk about the Wilfs now. Zygi and Mark Wilf, and I guess the whole family, they've been the owners since 2005, I think. So we're going on 20 years of the Vikings here. And the Vikings have lived in this always the bridesmaid, never the bride world. They've been probably made the playoffs less than you would want. I think a little less than half the time. They've had some of these like nasty little streaks, like, the kind of early Childress era and the Leslie Frazier. Sometimes they would like sneak into the wild card and break the streak, but like they have only had a couple of like truly elite years, right? But if you ask why in any given year, you're going to get a bunch of different answers. And sometimes you maybe would blame it on Spielman, or you'd blame it on, I don't know, Leslie Frazier or Mike Zimmer, or Kirk Cousins, or like whatever, right? Teddy Bridgewater, like whoever you want to say. It's never going to come on to the owners. And I think we should like take a step back and define what we want from an NFL owner. And I thought it was really telling that the NFLPA did that. They said they had one question for ownership that they were willing to publish, at least, for like how happy you are with ownership. And for every team, it's the same. Unless there was like a problem. Like Woody Johnson got a couple other bullet points that you don't want other bullet points. Seems like other bullet points, bad thing. You don't want it. So no other bullet points for the Wolves. But it was all based on, is this owner interested in making a competitive team? And like, think about the dynamic here. If you're an NFL owner, if you're Zygi Wilf, or if you're John Mara, or if you're like whoever, right? You are a business owner. You have a property that is a business. It's part of a network of businesses called the NFL. And that thing is supposed to generate some kind of profit and generate some kind of value for stakeholders. The fact that that thing happens to be part of a very visible competitive league is secondary to your contractual obligations as the owner of that thing. It just is. These people are going to be more interested in making money than anything else. The kinds of people that buy NFL teams usually prioritize that kind of thing. So it does kind of make sense that among NFL owners, there is a spectrum of who actually really cares about making their team competitive and who just kind of is all right as long as this thing's turning a profit and I've got all my other businesses I'm tending to as well. The Wilfs are involved, but not overbearing. This has been my read on the Wilfs for years and years, whether it was Spielman or Kwesi or whatever. They're in the war room in the draft. Like, they're there. They're in meetings. They have constant dialogue with the head coach and the GM. They talk to them every single day. But my understanding of this, based on years and years of reports about various situations, whether it's the quarterback thing or what they're going to do in the draft or head coaching stuff, is that the Wilfs have, I'll call them directives, but not demands. To me, demands would be, hey, I talked to a homeless guy and you have to draft Johnny Manziel. That's a demand. I forget if that was the owner for the Browns or not, or if that was the GM or whatever. But, hey, Condoleezza Rice said that Johnny Manziel would be a good idea. You have to do it. Like, that is a demand. Things like Woody Johnson forcing the issue on like Aaron Rodgers' friends. That is like owner meddling that you don't want. Jerry Jones, same deal. Owner meddling that very clearly has damage because these guys are businessmen and not football men. While the Wilfs were football fans, they're diehard Giants fans is what they grew up as. They don't have a football background any more than anybody who watches on Sunday does, right? They're businessmen. And my understanding is that they have awareness of that and do not insert themselves where they don't have the football knowledge to like cut it up. But they have directives where they want an overall direction of the team. They're not micromanaging. They're saying, we ain't tanking. High level stuff like that. They're saying, we must do everything we can to be competitive. And the word competitive is used in this, and it's also, I think it's accidentally taken on a kind of a double meaning. To me, being competitive, saying we have to have a commitment to being competitive, means every decision, every point we make, every time we wake up, everything we do here needs to be aimed at winning football games as much as it possibly can, and we need to work hard to do, to do our best in that regard. And I think to a lot of people, they hear competitive and it is turned to mush in their brain that sounds like good, not great. That being competitive is settling for just competitive, not contending or not actually winning the Super Bowl. And I don't think that that's what the word is meant when people say that in the NFL. Like, I don't think people are ever going in and saying, yeah, we're good if we're like 10-7. Yeah. Like, show me someone who thinks that. Maybe there are owners who think that as long as the thing is profitable and then they don't care about the record at all. But that's like the closest I think you can get. But beyond all that, when you talk about the players and the idea of someone wanting to be here so much that, that Daniel Jones is going to come to our practice squad over anybody else's, and we get this opportunity to consider him as another option to this whole thing, specifically because of the facilities. That is direct impact of the facilities. To give them that option. If they end up going with it at some kind of discount and he ends up being a reasonable backup for JJ McCarthy and he comes in a fourth quarter and converts a 3rd and 17 Nick Mullins style, like that's direct impact, right? And it's impact of the Wilfs not having the right idea about how good you should try to be in a given year. And I've spent years on this show pushing back on the idea that there's some exact right target amount of, trying you should do. Like, no, you should do everything you possibly can every single year and go forward. You can allocate resources responsibly and make those decisions, but you shouldn't make those decisions based on like, well, I think we're going to be good this year, but not next year or something like that. Because then you're just kind of committing to lose sometimes. And I don't think you should ever be committed to lose. I think that's exactly the thing that people like about the Wilfs is that they're never committed to lose. They're always committed to winning. That's what these people care about. They care about winning. The owners don't have to care about winning. And that's why the NFLPA is making such a big point of appreciating the owners that do. This gives us, again, objective and empirical evidence that having an owner that cares above all else about being competitive at all times is an advantage. It is a thing that pays real dividends. It's not a strategy choice. It's just a thing that helps. And especially in a league that has such a fleeting nature. You're here one year, you're there the next, you're cut, you're signed, you're traded. So much changes. Nobody wants to join a team that takes every other year off to try to get a better draft pick because you don't want to join the team and be there on the off year. You want to be there when they're actually trying. And I would say teams that are known for having, years where they just straight up don't matter, well, the Raiders are not going to do as well on stuff like this. And they're not going to be as popular of destinations. And they're going to have to pay extra to convince free agents to deal with that. Or at least the free agents that are more motivated by competitiveness, the older guys or the more established players versus people that are just, happy to go sell themselves out to the highest bidder. Obviously, it changes player to player. But on the whole, you will encounter bidding wars where you don't have to pay as much because they actually want to come there and you don't have to talk them into it. So allow me to declare the Wilfs are good owners. As far as owners go, the curve that we grade them on, I'm not talking about any kind of like class morality or don't like miss me with that. We're not talking about that today. Okay, chill. But as far as owners and their impact on their NFL franchises go, it's not a coincidence to me at all that the Wilfs score this highly, that the players view them that highly, and that it continues to pay measurable dividends to the Minnesota Vikings. And one of the things that you get when you have a culture like that, and a staff and a facility and all those things that everybody likes to be a part of, is you don't get players who are trying desperately to get out of your building. Not often, at least. Even like the Stephon Diggs situation was like kind of an accident. But you don't get people saying like, I want out, please grant me a trade request. that's what's happening with a lot of people right now, and we have to kind of keep up with it because there's some interesting names on the market that could totally change the Vikings free agency strategy. So that'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, I spent a little time yesterday talking about the idea of trading for Jonathan Allen and how David Harrison, who does Locked On Commanders, actually thought that it wouldn't be that expensive of a trade, at least not draft capital wise. You got to take on some of the money, but it could happen for like a middle of day 3 pick, which the Vikings have a couple of. It's not only that, but coming off an injury, being over 30, being an established player, but maybe buying low, like very Kwesi kind of thing. And I thought it was not only a good idea, but a very plausible one to see the Vikings be involved in. It just makes sense with their character and something I would be really excited to see them do. We'll see how all that plays out, but Jonathan Allen is not the only name that's starting to get granted a trade request. And do you notice that we're hearing all of this week? This is the week where agents talk to each other, where GMs talk to each other, and everybody finds out exactly what the market kind of looks like. And then they can start to make the decisions about, hey, this guy, in this case, it's the Patriots, who ranked like 31st in this survey, very, very unhappy the entire year, very unhappy with the Gerard Mayo, with the way things kind of went down with Gerard Mayo, had all kinds of problems in the preseason as well. You might remember some drama around that and like Drake May and how they were approaching things. So Devon Godchaux is the latest of these names. He's been a Patriot for 4 years. He's been an absolute monster in the middle. I think he's a good player. Like I think he's not going to get the superstar treatment of like a Jalen Carter or whatever, or like a Jonathan Allen, who has had that superstar treatment for some time. But I think this is a perfectly good player. This is a starter that you can acquire probably on the cheap. And his season in New England was tumultuous. After a blowout in week 4, there was he called out players. He was like, yeah, I think players are playing selfishly. They're freelancing. They're going for stats. We're not playing as a team. And that's a pretty astounding thing to hear from a veteran in week 4 of a team. You know, the Patriots last year, they were in a down year. They were in an off year. They were in the kind of year that players don't really want to be a part of. And it was very clear that Godchaux didn't want to be a part of that kind of season. And even though things for them are looking okay with Drake May, I think they should be reasonably happy about what he's been able to do and hope that there's more development in the future for him. But players who are veterans, who are looking to make their money, who are looking to, make their legacy, don't want to sit here and like wait through rebuilds. Dudes don't want to do it. They say, trade me to someone who's good, please. They've granted that trade request, calling out his teammates, having a contract situation that's kind of up in the air. There's not a lot of guaranteed, if there is any guaranteed money on him. Oh, there is. Okay, his 2025 salary is guaranteed at age 31, but none after that, and a fairly low actual cash flow number where he's getting base salary of $4 million plus another $1 million in bonuses. He's only getting $5 million this year in terms of cash flow, and maybe wants to renegotiate that and isn't going to do it. So the relationship has soured and deteriorated in New England. And again, based on what other New England Patriots players said under the protection of anonymity to their union, kind of sounds like that's more of a New England thing than a Godchaux thing. So a trustworthy veteran on a very good price tag, and if you have to throw a little bit extra on there, you can throw a little bit extra on there, getting ushered out by a team that's not going to have any leverage at all to ask you for a good draft pick. This is a great value play that I'm a huge fan of. Absolutely into it. How about another one that broke like right before I started recording this? Jonah Jackson, the guard for the Los Angeles Rams. He signed a big old free agency deal last year as one of the like premier guards on the market. He signed a big one with the Rams and then ended up getting hurt right away and kind of missing the whole season. So there might be a little buyer's remorse on this deal, but also something is going on in Los Angeles. Everyone wants out of Los Angeles. Everyone's getting traded. Cooper Kupp requests, they just said they were going to trade Cooper Kupp. They didn't even tell him. Matt Stafford maybe getting traded. Maybe he's getting traded to the Giants or something. By the way, that's a situation to monitor. Even if he doesn't end up on the Vikings, that does kind of have an impact on Sam Darnold's market, because if you want Sam Darnold to make a lot of money, for example, to qualify for a better comp pick, you probably really want the Rams to be in on him. Or if you're, holding out hope for a tag in trade, that would be the team you do want to do it with, right? They would absolutely. I mean, Sean McVay's "I can fix him" nature. He's talking about like, yeah, I think we could get a lot out of Jimmy Garoppolo. Give him someone with a little bit more talent like Sam Darnold, and absolutely, you can look at what Kevin O'Connell did, and Sean McVay can replicate that. Of all people, probably the most qualified guy in the league to replicate that. So I could see them being very interested, and so I think we want the Rams on the QB market. If really no matter which path the Vikings end up taking, it's better for the Vikings if the Rams are on the QB market, and the Rams would replace the Giants in that way. But so something to keep in mind as those rumors continue to come out. But now you've got this guard that wants out that is going to get out. It seems like the Rams are hitting a full nuke button, honestly, and you're just kind of striking on that. And this is guy. He's going to be 28. He costs, I think, about $17.5 million if you let his roster bonus vest, which happens on March 15th. So it would be the thing, like it would just become guaranteed money, but it would travel with him either way. So it wouldn't affect a trade very much. But you'd have to take on that money, but that might be better than the guards you can get out there. It might be a better deal than going out and getting Trey Smith, who might be a little overrated right now on the guard market. That said, he's coming off an injury, right? And again, this would not cost a lot of draft capital. Everybody sees what's going on in LA, and everybody knows that you don't have to let them bend you over a barrel and demand your first round pick for a guy. If they're going to trade away all their guys just to try to save money, well, guess what? We're doing you a favor by fixing your books. Yeah, we'll give you a conditional 7th in 2027 for it. Like, you can get away with that stuff, even though it doesn't feel congruous at all with a starting quality guard that made a Pro Bowl in 2021. That's Jonah Jackson. So, this is a really robust trade market, and I would love to see Kwesi look to the trenches and try to get something done in that trade market to help make free agency go a little bit smoother. And the couple of day 3 picks, they've got a 5th round pick from Cleveland. They got in the Zadarius Smith trade a couple years ago. If they could flip that around for a starter in the trenches that has an impact, even on a short-term deal, that would be a coup. Even if that guy costs money, still a coup. Tomorrow, it's Fortnite Friday. So we might not get to talk to Tyler Forness. He's out on the road, so I might get somebody from the Locked On Network or somebody else to come in, but we'll talk a little bit of draft with a guest. I'm going to try to get that to happen tomorrow. I'll see you all for that, and as always, Skull.